Welcome to This Explainer. You know, the ocean covers about 70% of our planet, but right beneath that surface, there is a literally terrifying history of missing crews, ancient, almost impossible computers, and billions, yes, billions in lost gold. So keep your eyes locked right here, because we are diving straight into the mysteries of the deep. To set the pace here, I want you to ask yourself a genuinely terrifying question. What could possibly compel a perfectly safe crew to abandon an unsinkable ship and just vanish into the unforgiving waves?
Let's kick things off with Section 1, the ultimate ghost ships.
Take the famous Mary Celeste. Look at this incredibly tight timeline. In just a matter of weeks, a totally routine 1872 voyage turned into history's most notorious desertion. When she was finally found, her sails were set, the cargo was completely intact, belongings were undisturbed, but the crew, they were just gone. Poof. Now, obviously, the public went wild, dreaming up giant squid attacks, bloody mutinies, and even alien abductions. But honestly, the forensic reality is a lot more grounded and way more tragic. It looks like leaking alcohol fumes from the cargo likely caused a panicked evacuation. Then, a snapped tow line left the crew totally adrift in a tiny lifeboat, while their empty ship just sailed on without them. And this eerie phenomenon? It absolutely continues into the modern era. In 1955, the MV Joy Tata was found completely empty despite being deemed practically unsinkable. But even more chilling is the cause too in 2007. It was found drifting aimlessly without its 3 crewmen. But get this. There was a video recorder on board still playing fresh footage from that exact same morning. No way, right? For the Joyita, imaginations immediately ran to Cold War Soviet submarine kidnappings and modern sea pirates. But investigators quickly burst those bubbles. For example, some made-in-Japan knives that people thought were evidence of foul play? Yeah, they proved those were literally just broken old 1940s fishing tools. Case closed on the pirate theory. Moving right along to Section 2, vanished without a trace. 306. That staggering number represents the men who vanished without a single, solitary piece of debris when the massive USS Cyclops disappeared en route to Baltimore back in 1918. And the Cyclops definitely isn't alone here. Back in 1909, the 500-foot passenger steamship Warta was traveling off the coast of South Africa. A nearby ship reported seeing 2 massive, bright flashes of light in the dark. And then, total disappearance. 211 people were essentially erased in an instant. When you lay it out, this is a terrifying historical timeline. From the Wasp in 1812 all the way to the massive 361-foot French Surcouf submarine in World War II, the sea has this terrifying ability to swallow hundreds of lives in the blink of an eye. In the case of the U.S. sub S-28, all that remained was a floating slick of diesel fuel.
That brings us to Section 3, grim Arctic survival.
So in 1845, the Franklin expedition set off looking for the Northwest Passage packed with state-of-the-art gear. Instead, they walked into a catastrophic failure. As archaeologist Douglas Stenton points out with his devastating quote, their desperate choices didn't actually save their lives, it really only prolonged their suffering. It's wild because modern science is still unlocking these centuries-old horrors today. We always knew all 134 men on the Erebus and Terror, hopelessly trapped in the ice, died. But get this, recent DNA match to a cut-marked jawbone proved that even the second-in-command, Captain James Fitzjames, was actually cannibalized by his own starving crew. Okay, changing gears completely for Section 4, ancient sunken technology. Just look at this impossible preservation. In 1900, sponge fishers sheltering from a storm off Antikythera stumbled upon these incredibly realistic Hellenistic bronze statues, plus a sword cast in a single piece, just sitting there buried 50 meters down. And against all odds, this incredibly fragile Egyptian and Syro-Palestinian glassware survived not only a super violent ancient shipwreck, but literally 2 millennia of punishing ocean currents. It's like a time capsule. Notice how the scholarly documentation of these text fragments really contrast with the map, mapping out the exact spot of the wreck. That spot is in the notoriously dangerous shipping route between Kythera and Crete, basically a deadly, high-stakes lane of the ancient world.
But actually, the statues weren't even the biggest prize. Tucked amongst all that beautiful art was a heavily corroded, unassuming lump of copper. Well, it turned out to be the Antikythera mechanism, an impossibly complex ancient Greek astronomical calculator from 80 BC that completely rewrote everything we thought we knew about Greek technology.
And finally, Section 5, the billion-dollar wreck. I really want to let that number sink in for a second. $20 billion. That is the staggering estimated value of the gold, silver, and jewels that are currently just sitting at the bottom of the Caribbean aboard the 1708 Spanish galleon, the San Jose. As you can imagine, the legal war over this treasure is so incredibly chaotic that a U.S. federal judge literally compared it to a high-octane spy thriller, blending a glorious Age of Sail novel with international intrigue. Everybody wants a piece of the ultimate maritime holy grail. This table breaks down just how absurdly complex the battle is. You've got Colombia claiming it as an entirely national cultural treasure. A private U.S. salvage company, Glocamora, claims they found it back in the 80s. Spain steps in, saying, hey, it's a sunken military vessel, so it's protected state property. And meanwhile, indigenous peoples rightfully demand shared heritage, pointing out that the treasure was actually mined using their ancestors' forced labor. So, knowing what we've seen today, from empty ghost ships and cannibalized captains to ancient computers and literally $20 billion in sunken gold, you have to wonder, we have barely scratched the surface of the ocean floor. What other impossible mysteries are lurking down there in the dark, just waiting for us to find them? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.